Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Rockstar Games just dropped the new GTA 6 extended look on Netflix and YouTube, giving us a look at the world, the characters, the environments, and some of the insane details going into this game. So in this video, I'm going to be watching the entire thing and breaking it down from a game developer's perspective, looking at the graphics, the NPCs, the animations, the environments, and explain some of the technology that Rockstar might be using behind the scenes. There's already a ton of interesting stuff to talk about, so let's go ahead and jump right into the video. Okay, so it starts off with the two main characters. They're walking up to this building here, and what you notice right off the bat is just, first of all, the NPCs, the characters, and all the different animations. Now, Rockstar did a New York Times article that just came out today. GTA 6 has over 600,000 character and NPC animations in the game. For reference, GTA 5 only had about 55,000 total character animations. I mean, that is a massive increase in animations. And if a lot of that is actually motion captured animations, that's probably the reason why the NPCs just look so lifelike. And in this apartment complex, they basically have like the cops drug bust them. Another thing that I noticed in this little fighting scene is some of the environmental destruction details. We have like this guy running and smashing the wall there and just shooting out things like the lights, the light bulbs, all that stuff, which I thought was pretty interesting. So the trailer takes us back to the apartment here, and you can see there's a lot of details in the apartment, and there's actually a lot of interaction. So over here you can see I just paused it, and you'll notice that the player can actually interact with the lighting. So we can even turn on, it looks like the kitchen light over here. Player has an option, but then he goes and walks up to the fridge. He opens the fridge, and you can see that we have a couple of different options. We have a couple of different beer options as well as some smoothie options. And so all these little interactions where you can, turn on the lights, open the fridge and grab a drink, and also even watch the TV. He goes up to the TV, and you can actually see that there's, a little TV animation playing, and you can actually change the channel as well. So all these tiny interactions are what really brings the game to life and makes it feel, less like a video game and more like a life simulator. I mean, in GTA 5, they had things like the radio channels that you can switch. They have that obviously in GTA 6, but just having extra levels of detail when it comes to things like the player interaction is just a whole nother level. And creating these interactions isn't particularly difficult. It's just more or less, a time consuming thing that you have to, grab the animations, get all the assets for it, and then making sure that the system actually scales. And another nice little detail is when they transition from the interior of the apartment to the exterior, you'll notice that they have like this little auto exposure. Basically, it's sort of to mimic what your eyes do in real life when you walk outside from a dark room to an outside where you have the sun beaming down on you, and your eyes automatically adjust to the lighting. So the lighting in this game is just incredible. And so here's some of the footage of them driving through the city. And the first thing that I noticed right off the bat is just how much vegetation and foliage there is in this shot. So you can see here there's like so many different palm trees. They have, lots of these trees on the street, as well as things like the grass. You can see all the grass on the ground, the bushes, the shrubs. There was just so much detail and so much foliage. The most impressive thing about this is the fact that this is running all on a base PS5. So this is a base PS5. So that means that they had to optimize a lot of the models in the scene and use something called LODs. Basically, an LOD stands for level of detail. And so you have typically a very high detailed, high poly count mesh where it has a high texture resolution. And then the further the player gets away from that model, you swap it out for basically like a low poly mesh with lower textures, lower geometry. And so that's essentially what they're doing here in this game. All the objects basically have custom LODs. And so you can have all this detail on the screen, all this dense amount of foliage, billboards, buildings, all this stuff in the level, but essentially it's lower level detail and is slowly being replaced with higher level of detail when the player moves closer to these objects. So that's why everything looks incredibly detailed, but also, the game is actually able to run on a PS5. And you can see an example of this is this little Unreal Engine project over here, the city sample. Basically, they've done the same exact technique over here where they've baked out this LOD. So you can see this entire city that you see right here, which is this city sample demo, has this massive HLOD. Basically, a HLOD is sort of the same thing as a LOD, but in this case, you'd use it for a large, city environment or open world map. And so you can bake all the geometry, all the buildings, the cars, all the little details into one massive mesh. And you can see see in the wireframe, the amount of triangles in here, the actual geometry is fairly low. Like these are just a couple of different boxes. So the game actually runs really fast with this, level of detail streaming that you're using. So essentially that's the same exact technology that Rockstar is using in their game here. They're just using LODs to swap them out with higher level meshes, and the further away the player gets from them, they'll swap them out with the lower level details. That's how they're actually able to make the buildings in the cities in the background actual buildings you can walk up to and enter them, and you can see all the details because they're using this level of detail system. Now a quick word from our sponsor. If you guys are interested in learning game development or want to make your own video game, I have some game dev courses that will teach you how to make complete games inside of Unreal Engine. Because one of the biggest problems with learning Unreal Engine is getting stuck watching hundreds of disconnected tutorials without ever knowing how everything actually comes together in a fully finished game. So that's exactly why I created these courses. Instead of just teaching individual Unreal Engine features, we actually build complete games from start to finish. If you're completely new, my UE5 Beginners course walks you through building 4 different games while learning blueprints, user interface, AI, animation, weapons, game mechanics, and all the fundamentals you'll need to start creating games on your own. Then when you're ready to move up to more advanced development, you can learn how to build a complete multiplayer survival game with systems like multiplayer inventory, crafting, harvesting, base building, a open world map, and so much more. But if you're serious about learning Unreal Engine, the best value is my Unreal Engine 5 Masterclass bundle. It gives you access to all my courses and completed project files for one single price, so you can start with the fundamentals and work your way towards building much more advanced games. You can check out the UE5 Masterclass bundle and all of my courses using the link in the description below. And with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right back to the video. Okay, so the next part of the trailer, they go to this rooftop over here, and this is just absolutely detailed. Again, you can see the transition from the interiors of, the building, from the elevator, from them walking out to the exterior. You can see, again, the auto exposure, where the lighting sort of adjusts when the player walks in. Again, that's just another little detail that makes everything look more realistic. But the thing about these interiors and areas like this rooftop bar that makes everything so realistic is just the tiny little details, but also the NPCs. So you can see they're talking with these characters. This is obviously part of like the storyline, and this shot in particular, I think it just looks absolutely incredible. Just look at the lighting. So the way that the sun is hitting the back of the character's head, and you can kind of see, the light reflecting off of their face and their hair, but also things like the hair and, the shirt textures. It's crazy to think that this is actually a video game. This looks almost like AI generated, almost like real life, just because of like the lighting, like the texture and detail. And, even this shot over here, you can see like this character over here, he has like this sort of sunburn texture on his skin, like this redness. Just the tiny little details like that makes like everything look even more believable. And again, you can kind of see some of the background of the city here. Of course, it's kind of, they got like this depth of field going on here, so that's why it's all blurry. But again, they're using those LODs so they can have the entire city data streaming in. So another huge thing is the traffic in this game, the actual AI driving the cars. You'll notice that it is a lot more realistic. And what I mean by this is in this scene right here, you can see that the player is driving, and we have this car sort of like swerve, almost trying to cut off the player. And typically in games, when you have a traffic system in your game, usually what you have is a basic car mesh that's following, different splines. So the splines sort of define where the car is going to move, and it's got like this predefined invisible railroad track that essentially the car is following. And you can see in this scene here, I'll put up a little example to show sort of like the track or the path where these, AI are following. So to see that the cars actually dynamically react to when the player drives by them is also pretty impressive. And again, just adds more detail in real life. If you're driving through, Texas or maybe even Florida here, you're going to have a lot of those drivers that just, cut you off or speed up or do like just weird maneuvers. So just capturing that and adding it to the game just makes everything even more believable. Okay, so the next scene, they take us to this sort of cop chase out where they're shooting, the helicopter and the police cars that are chasing them. What's interesting about this is the way that the player can actually shoot out, the cars. So you can see when he shoots, part of the hood pops up. You can shoot part of the engine, but he also blows out the tire, and because he blew out the tire, you can see that the car crashes in the direction where they shoot out the tire, which is pretty impressive. So again, it also has all those different destruction elements. So how you can just, run into stoplights, street lights. All this type of destruction is not new to GTA, but obviously you can see that it's just, next level in the way that it actually interacts with the vehicles. So over here now we get some gameplay of them driving the car. So now the player is actually driving the vehicle. You can see how the NPCs react when you drive by them. So that's really nice to see. So the player finally escapes and they park their car in this little garage, and basically they burn the car. So they have like this little Molotov cocktail. They throw it at the vehicle, and you can see that even things like the glass on the car lights crack and explode. So that's pretty crazy. So they get into another escape vehicle over here, and they start driving through the city again. So here we're going to see some more details of the city. Again, just from this image over here, you'll notice that we have a lot of breakup in the street. You're going to have that a lot in most cities where they have parts of the street repaved over, and you have these different patches. So it's just really nice to see all the texture and detail. What's pretty impressive over here from this shot is we actually see like this tire mark over here. So they drove through this puddle, and because, part of the tire is wet, it actually left a tire mark, which is pretty cool as well. So they're using a little decal for that. Decals, basically you can project like a texture onto the ground. You can create things like tire marks, bullet holes, all that stuff is using decals. It's using the same technology, so I'm assuming that's what they use for the little tire mark there. Okay, we can see a little shot. He's playing some basketball. Yeah, it's pretty insane how many details in this game. You have scuba diving. You can even work out, apparently, and that affects your body. Even the detail of the water here. You can see things like the ocean, these little particle effects and everything from diving into the water. Everything looks insanely well done. And even the VR guy over there. So yeah, you have kayaking. You even have things like racing. You can race through the streets. And then this next part, you can see that the player equips on this, bandana, like sort of like this face mask. And this is actually a pretty neat part of the game, because the NPCs, you can see when you walk up to the building, dynamically react to the player based on apparently what they're wearing. So like this bandana mask that they put on, because we have like these two sketchy characters sort of walking up to the shop and they're wearing masks, the NPCs obviously walked away because they're kind of spooked. So it's pretty cool to see that NPCs are actually reacting to like the player's appearance. So if you're wearing like obviously like a ski mask, they're going to be a little spooked and they're going to walk away because they know there's some sort of trouble coming up. Okay, so they're robbing this jewelry store and they escape onto this bike, and again they're driving through the city. And a nice little detail, they like flipped off the cops. But another crazy part is they have IRL streamers. So they have like this streamer here. And again, another scene where you're driving through the street, and just look at how many palm trees are in this shot right here. You can see just so many different trees, so much foliage and vegetation. And if you actually look very closely at some of the palm trees all the way in the distance, they're using kind of like this depth of field blur so that you can't really notice the lower detailed models all the way in the background. So the further away the player is from these objects, they're actually converting to like these 2D billboards. Basically, like a 2D billboard is essentially just like the sprite image. So they take like a picture of the 3D model, a front and side picture, and they project it together to create sort of like this fake 3D billboard, when in fact it's just a 2D image. And so that's essentially what they're doing for, again, a lot of the vegetation and trees that are all the way off in the distance, that are essentially blurred because of the depth of field. That's how they can get away with the enormous dense foliage in vegetation, like all the palm trees. And again, this is the trailer, so it's going to be interesting to see how the actual game looks when we get it. Again, more different things, dirt biking, and then over here we have a shot of the city at night. So again, the nighttime lighting in this game is just absolutely incredible. A lot of games, with cities at nighttime, you have, really basic lighting, like the street lights and everything. Basically, you just have, white and black. But in GTA 6, you can see that there's a lot of different color lights, and that's just how it is in some of these bigger cities. They have a lot of different colors. And so just to see those different colored lights, different street lights, building lights, all that stuff brings a lot more vibrance and colors to these environments. And then we have another shot where the player is base jumping off of a skyscraper. And so, again, another impressive thing that Rockstar revealed is that all these buildings, again, are actual buildings you can run up to. So these aren't just background buildings. You can actually go up to the buildings in this level. And again, it all comes back to the LODs like we talked before. Like the city example I showed you, where they basically take the entire map and they bake out a massive LOD, so that they have, all these buildings in the background are just a couple of polys. Like this is just a box, basically, with a texture on it. So the reason why they're able to have the entire map basically almost like loaded in is because they're using those background LOD models. They have basically a massive mesh that they've generated for the entire city. And then we have like this airport scene, which is pretty cool as well. What I really like about this part of the trailer is, again, just look at all the lights in this level. You can see like the reflection of the puddles, but also things like the airport lights. There's so many different lights off in the distance right over here, like the runway lights, all that stuff. You can see we have blue, we have green, we have red, just a ton of variety in color in the actual lights. If you actually look at like a reference of an airport runway at nighttime, you're going to see all of these different tiny colors of lights. So it's insane to see the amount of details that they've added in here. And also the city lights. So again, the skyscrapers, all that stuff, they have, different colors. We have pink, red, light blue. Oh, another thing is you'll notice that when you drive through the puddles, you can see like the, puddles splashing water. So again, that's another thing that you can add in games where they have, different particle effects based on what surface type you're driving over. Okay, so we have more shots of the city over here. And what's cool about this part is you notice the player gets out of the car, but look really closely at the details on the car. So we have things like on the window, you can see the little raindrops. So you can see how like the light reflects off of the raindrops on the window, but also on the side of the vehicle, you can see all the little water droplets. So again, I don't know if they have some sort of dynamic weather system where, if it rains, then it will affect all the vehicles and they have some sort of water mask where it applies all these little raindrops. But that would be pretty interesting to see if they have something like that, where they have like a storm system, creates a bunch of puddles on the ground, and then also it affects things like the vehicles, adding these little water droplets. But I think that was a pretty cool detail to see. Okay, so they walk up to this building here, and again, you can see some more of the lighting, just the different colors of the lights here. Okay, and so the player goes on this mission where he has to basically protect like the VIP, and then essentially here he gets in sort of like this gunfight with these other characters. And then here we're going to see so many details in the destruction. So you can see shot a box of papers there, so we have a little paper explosion, but we have things like glass destruction, so he's shooting out the glass there, but also things like the computers. So you see when he shoots at some of the NPCs or when they shoot at him, they hit some of the monitor screens. You can see things like sparks and, little electric bursts over there. So again, just little destruction elements and little details like that. And then we have a nice little shot of the city. This time it's sort of at this sunset lighting. So again, you can see all the different color of lights, the blue, the turquoise, the pink and yellow. Just a lot of variation. And you can see some of those rooftop areas. We have different environments, outdoors. And yeah, that was pretty much the entire trailer. Yeah, there's just so many details, and there's probably a lot more that I could have uncovered if I watched this over like 10 different times. I'm sure I could find like new details every single time I watch this over. But yeah, honestly, this game is pretty impressive. But yeah, I'm interested to know your guys' thoughts on this. Maybe I'll do another breakdown of some more video clips that come out. If there's any details that I missed, let me know down in the comments. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. So hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.